Good morning, everyone. I have a really big clock just here so that I'm going to be on time. Perfect. Yeah, that's good. Okay. Just wait for this. So, my name is Delia, and I've been given a very big honour and privilege to be able to do the Ranulph Glanville Memorial Lecture. And it is with humility that I actually will be doing this today. There are several people in the room here who knew Ranulph very closely and very personally. And but for those who didn't know Ranulph, let's see if we get his beautiful picture up on the screen. It hasn't come up. Okay, great. He was a cybernetician, he was a designer, he was an artist, and he was a great orator. And he was someone who basically managed to put design, systems, and cybernetics together. He was the Professor of Innovation at the Royal London School of Art, but he passed away in December 2014. He was also one person who wasn't really big into slides, apparently. He didn't really like slides very much. And so I'm going to just try and do pictures, mainly. This talk was basically presented as the importance of collaboration and connection for student research. Now, Alec over there basically said, hey, you know, what is a student? And that came up in a conversation last year when the very first PhD student group came through. And all of us who weren't in the student PhD group want to be part of it because we all still felt that we were students. And then Shankar up there was also saying that even as a teacher, we also learn quite a lot from the students. And for me, I find myself that I am the research instrument. And so therefore, I'm always learning. I learn from every single person that I walk down the street and I talk to them. And so therefore, that's why I was looking at the connecting and collaborating in a networked world. The other thing that came up to me as well was like, how can you actually collaborate if you haven't connected first? Okay? I mean, if you haven't connected, I mean, what am I collaborating with? So that was another reason why I changed the, sort of the topic. So one of the reasons where I have my connection with Ranulph, which is quite personal and very, very meaningful to me, was that in 2014, I basically put forward my very first abstracts for the ISSS conference and also for the American Society for Cybernetics. And, I got asked to sort of like redo my abstract for the American Society for Cybernetics, and which was great. I loved it. I was jumping around going, oh my God, I've been accepted. And it was this very, very cool. But the way that they had actually done the system in 2014 was that once you got accepted, you had to put the abstract up onto the system, and everyone within the conference had to peer review the paper and leave a comment. Only one person left a comment for me. That was Ranulph. And so I was doing the boundary triage, controlling the man and the machine. And I was also looking at the boundary, and I hadn't actually come across laws of form. So I think it's very, very interesting that, yeah, this is becoming quite a big topic at the moment. I'm finding lots and lots of people within the community who I'm going to be able to network with. So, but this was quite good, where Ranulph basically said, he pointed me through to George Spencer Brown, who I hadn't looked at, because I was looking specifically at critical systems thinking. I was looking specifically at system sciences. And so I was stuck in my own bubble. Okay, so, and he basically connected with me and opened up my world to new areas. Now, what you don't see there is that I created a relationship. I then responded back to him and said, thank you, I'm going to look into it and I'll keep in touch. Now, I think that's a really important part when we're connecting to get to the collaborating part. So what is a network?
That, right there.
What's that right there?
It's places where people connect. It's spaces between different bits where there's a lot of rich stuff happening in the spaces between.
Okay, Jacqueline, what do you think it is?
Yeah, I think pretty much the same.
So a network is that. It looks pretty static to me, though. Okay? And that's sort of like a normal standard, network diagram. So this is what we see on LinkedIn. Okay? This is who knows of LinkedIn? Who's on LinkedIn? Can I have a raise of hands? Brilliant. If you're not on LinkedIn, please get on LinkedIn and link yourselves in with everyone else, please. So this is Chris Howard. I don't know him personally, but that's his social network. Okay, so these are all the links that he has. And the green areas and the blue areas, these are basically the areas of expertise. And as you can see, they sort of like clump. But once again, this is all incredibly static. So, and if we're talking about systems thinking says that we must define a boundary, or a system has a boundary. Where is the boundary? Can anyone answer? Can someone tell me where the boundary is in this network? I'm going to get my... I'm going to clip-clop up the stairs otherwise. Could you run up to
The boundary depends on the purpose and who's involved in the boundary judgments. And so if it is the actor themselves, Chris Hote, a boundary judgment could be, from their perspective in reflection, the set of networks of connections that are enacted on a daily basis or a weekly basis or a monthly basis. Or alternatively, we could, as an outside observer, say it's the set of connections that are enacted in a given year or a given bit of time, depending on what our purpose was in analysing the system of interest.
Thank you, Ray. Sorry, but I'll take you on. Okay, so I'm a student of Gerald Midgley's, and in his book, Systems, Intervention and Practice, 2000, boundary may be key. That was one of the key statements that he said. And I got very, very, very interested in this boundary concept. Because, you're quite right, it is in that system and purpose and who's connected. But then what happens when you create that boundary? What are you excluding? What are you including? And when you make that exclusion, what are you going to miss? What's going to happen when you're not looking? Who's going to be looking at it when you're not looking at it? And so, so this is a very key thing. And I also wanted to find out exactly how do boundaries come to life? And so then that's how my boundary triage came up, but I'm not going to present that today because that's not what we're talking about today. So what I'm talking about today is that we're actually bounded. There is something inside of us that's making all these decisions about the boundaries, but we're bounded and bounded and bounded in so many different ways. And we're not just bounded by our thinking, we're also bounded by the systems of our body. We have a physiological body here that gets too hot, it gets too cold, it gets tired, I get thirsty, I need to go to the toilet, or I'm hungry. Sometimes I feel a very negative atmosphere. All of these things are going to affect how I think. My systems thinking is going to be affected by that noise. And there's another unseen boundary, the time boundary. So if I'm time-bound, like I've got now 10 minutes, I'm time-bound. And so I'm going to be looking at that. Or if we need to go and catch a bus, and we're talking to someone, we're not listening to that other person. We're not going to be able to relate. So all of a sudden, our system isn't going to be able to actually think properly or absorb information properly. And the other thing that is a system that I've been trying to grapple with personally is the emotional system. Okay. Past few months, I've actually been asking myself, why the hell do we have an emotional system? You know, because it can swing from left to right to left to right. But for those who are, for me, I find that cybernetics helps. Okay, cybernetics helps because it makes me stop and look beyond it helps me steer through the emotions and actually look beyond and look at the purpose and the action. So when I have one negative emotion or feeling sad, I can sort of like go, wait a minute, is that useful? I'm going to listen to that. But I'm not going to take it on board, I'm not going to sit in that. And if I'm happy, I'm sort of thinking, well, am I being over-positive on that point? Am I in my bubble? Do I need to look at the other side and just keep on steering that through? And there's a little acronym that has, that a research team back in Australia called the Digital Explorers have come up with. And it's called Lovers See. And so instead of like looking at emotions, which I think there's about 130 emotions and, sorry, that's values. So in values, it's 130 values. But emotions can basically change how you value things. And those values will change, yet again, how you think and how you relate and how you are. And so all these systems, what we want to try and achieve in here and how we're going to change, well, then we really need to start looking at those value systems and how the emotions are affecting those value systems. So it's all tied in. So, where am I going? Too many computers. So, this is what I sometimes find, especially with systems engineers, but this uncontrollable urge to show people better ways of doing things. And that's another thing that I sort of find that we've got to be a little bit careful with as a system scientist, is that we do have uncontrollable urges to show people better ways of doing things. But when we do that, we stop to listen. And we stop to ask questions. I'm not going to say too much about that. That came from one of my digital explorers when I was introducing them to system sciences. And, but I do think we do need to think about that one. So there's been a lot about talk about love in a lot of these presentations. And I like love. I think love's a great thing. It's a really good thing. But how do I do love? Does anyone have Okay, so I'm going to ask someone up here, because she looks like she needs a bit of loving. Here we go. No? You do a lot of loving. Right. Could you tell me how we do love?
What?
How do we do love?
Oh, we love with the heart. And when a lot of emotion, and then a lot of conscious.
And how do you show it?
Talking or showing only my feelings.
So you're showing your feelings.
Yes.
Okay. Anyone else like to say how they show love? Yeah? I'm over here.
Embracing the world,
And how do you do that?
embracing everybody.
So that's action, right?
I think being open, and when you were talking about emotion, to really kind of dissolve the boundaries that we hold within ourselves. So as those boundaries dissolve, as you can be open to the world, to me that's the root, the foundation of loving others. So how that expresses, I think Louis' right, embracing, literally embracing others.
Okay, that's excellent. And I think this is really, really good. But what happens when we're scared? What happens when we're not feeling safe? Can we do love, do you think? I'll go on the other side. Do you think we can? Okay, I'm going to do a show of hands. If you're not feeling safe, how do you think we can show love? Put your hands up. Who says yes? Ooh. So you can show love if you aren't feeling safe, if I'm not feeling safe. Okay. Yeah, sorry. Okay. Because when you're not... Okay, so one of the things that I'm going to just put to you, just something to explore, is that when we're not feeling safe, what does one tend to do when you're not feeling safe? I can see some symbols of hands closing. Sorry. Any comments? Sorry, what did you say?
Boundaries.
Yes, boundaries. Okay, so we want to have all this love, and we think we're always going to be loving, but we are a physical system and we're a human system, and at the moment we're always thinking about the systems thinking, okay, but we are a system. Okay, we want and have intention for love, but we often feel unsafe. And when we're feeling unsafe, we put up a boundary. We do fight or flight. We stop to listen. We stop understanding another person. We stop valuing what another person has to say because we're so busy protecting our own ideas, our own thoughts, that we stop and we don't even know we're doing it. That's the thing, we don't even know we're doing it. And so when we're talking about this change, okay, I'm thinking, right, then we need to have a little bit of a stop and think, right, how do I feel at this very moment in time? I tell you, I'm scared. I am scared right now. But the thing is, what I need to do is I need to talk to myself and say, why am I scared? Because I've got all these friends in front of me. And you're friends. And you're not just a network. You're a system. You're a system because you're giving me input and you're helping me become a person. And I'm going to be an output. And I'm going to go into the world and I'm going to be able to talk to other people, and I'm going to be systemically passing on a message. And each and every one of you are going to be doing that as well. And I think that sometimes what we need to do is, if we're going to do love, like do it, what we need to do is listen. Listen to other people without judgment, without an agenda. Be quiet. Ask questions. And create that dialogue. And that was something that was very big that Ranulph was really into as well. Dialogue. Really having dialogue. So, this perception is reality is a comment that was made in May 2016, and it really disturbed me because thinking perception isn't reality, not in my mind. So I just sort of think, just as an exploration, just because I don't know the answer, I'm still going through with my research with this, and we've had some really interesting results. But and I'm incredibly grateful to a small team in Brisbane and in Sydney, and actually who have been working with me and have really trusted me and have become partners, not just friends but partners and co-collaborators in developing a system and exploring how our physiological, our emotional system actually affects our thinking and decisions, and also how we relate to one another. And I think that's probably something that we haven't really talked about as well, is that in a system we need to be relating, and that's a two-way process, okay? Which I'm not doing currently right now. So this was one of, hey! So I'm just going to go back over here. This is, I'm going to just show a little bit of relating going on. Hello there, how are you?
A little bit nervous all of a sudden.
My name's Delia, what's yours?
My name is Patricia.
And what do you do?
I draw on walls, but mostly I listen.
Do you get an opportunity to ask questions?
Could you repeat that? I didn't hear.
Okay. So, Patricia. So anyway, basically, I'm going to, and do you remember Ranulph's talk, this one?
Oh, yes.
Would you be able to tell us a little bit about it?
Well, there I drew a picture of him. That's great. Okay. This is going to take me a second. A way of being in the world that we cannot wow, it kind of goes back to what the last talk was about, which was being having a self-awareness and being part of the system. The pattern, that finding the patterns is being aware of the noun and the verb, of the being. And that the model is not the world itself. I remember that very clearly. Beautiful, thank you.
Okay, and so yeah, so it is a way of being. We are the system, and we are the boundary. We're the ones that create the boundaries. We are the ones that create the constraints. We're the ones that get to choose whether we're going to be the input, the output, the process, the flow. It's our choice. And it's not a choice, one or the other. I personally believe we have the potential, or that we are, all of these things happening at the same time. We just have to open our minds to it a little bit and just, you know, understand that, like Ray said earlier, it's like when we do our purpose and our action, that's why we define our boundaries, so we've got something to aim for, that we can steer towards that. But it isn't the boundary. That isn't the boundary. That isn't the system. We are the system. And actually, we are not the system really either. Because when we've got purposefulness and action, we become an us. It moves from a me, I, a you, a we-ness, to an us-ness. And an us-ness is a lot more powerful than a we-ness. So I'm going to show you something. This is, I was trying to find an image that basically described a network and collaboration. Now this is a GIF. Does everyone know what a GIF is? Okay, it's a moving picture made up of several images. And what you can't see is that there's 60 GIFs. And I think that this actually properly represents how we are as a network, where we are just like little dots and constellations. If we have a look at, you know, GIF 20, 21, you know, it goes into a little bit of darkness. And then we have like little dots of light. Hello. And then we all start to connect, and we get brighter, and we get brighter, and we get brighter. And then we get this. So that's me finished. I would like, if there's any questions about being a system, being a flow, being the network, please let me know.
Jason from Arizona. Thank you for a wonderful talk. As you are talking, I was trying to send you an email asking you how you did that wonderful network graph. And what I found is in the conference textbook, this Bible, cannot find your email. And you mentioned LinkedIn, and so I tried to get into LinkedIn. And I have a problem of forgetting passwords. So this is my travel computer. I'm kind of cut off by my own boundary of forgetting passwords. So when you say we need a boundary, and when you say that you suggest that we love when we already feeling threatened. A key word coming into mind is how about the terrorists? And how about the people they determined to destroy this civilization? And how are we going to build up the boundary or what?
I feel like I'm running for president. In terms of those boundaries, we need to also look at the other perspective. If we have a look at the terrorists, I mean, there's so many different things that you can look at, but I mean, at the University of Hull, we have people who are studying who've come from Libya during the uprising and the refugees. And one of the things, and as I said, this is when we're talking about love, is the practical way of doing it is to listen and to ask the question so you've got something to listen to, and to really ask what they were seeing, because what we see on TV and what is reported is not real. It's only partial. And so therefore, sometimes I think maybe, I think there's a really good clip on YouTube where there's a CIA agent talking about how she was interviewing the terrorists. And she was saying that basically they're just rebels because what the analogy that she gave was it was like Star Wars. So you've got the great big empire trying to bomb everyone and everything, and that actually the terrorists aren't actually the terrorists, they're actually the rebels trying to save their freedom. So I can't actually respond, sort of like give you an answer to that question because I'm not in that area. But what I'm trying to say is we need to have a look at our own perspectives, what we're listening to, especially in an information era where information is just being passed through the system and people are sharing things and sometimes not even reading them. And because we trust a person, we believe it, even though we don't even know where that person got their information from. And so I suppose the point I'm trying to say here is, in this networked world, we have more and more and more responsibility to try and find out what the source is and to find out what our own perspectives are and why and how we got them. That's it. Yes.
So getting back to your frustration about networks being static, I actually talked to a few people this week about how it'd be great to be able to visualize them as journeys, right? So we're not dots and straight line connections, but I have a journey or a path that got me to this point in time. Where my path goes in the future might be influenced by a conversation I had with you or a relationship I had with you, or I might veer off this way because I had a negative reaction. But if we could visualize networks more dynamically in the sense that the positive things that come from relationships, which is the whole point, can have ramifications for your individual system, changing paths. And it would be great with all the great visualization that we have now in these technologies. It'd be great if we could try to find ways to visualize some of these things just a little differently. It seems a challenge, but that would be really cool.
Yeah, I think we're going to get there, especially because we're all connecting and collaborating now.
Elena Leonard, Toronto. As I look at the slide up there, I think of Buckminster Fuller and how he said all systems are parallelograms, and how he asked us to try to find a world that works for everyone. And obviously the fact that we have terrorism, crime, a lot of these dysfunctional behaviors is because obviously the world isn't working for everyone. And some people don't have a constructive way of addressing it, or they get to the point where they don't see any other way but the way they are working. And I think it's part of our understanding to look and see ourselves as one of those lines, like an disintegration, connecting different nodes and seeing what we can do to make those boundaries, values, opportunities for love and understanding a little more clear.
I'm just going to...
David Ng, student at Aalto University. So I've been doing some reading extending Bateson's thinking, and I think that we need to reframe the way we're looking at this. Tim Ingold has been doing work, and we should not be thinking about points, we should be thinking about lines, because each of us is moving in time and moving in place, and that means that we're not looking at networks, we're looking at meshworks where people intersect with each other in periods of time. So for those of you who haven't seen Tim Ingold's work, a lot of it on YouTube, some really good books, and he extends the work of Bateson.
Thank you for that pointer, because that's a good point. Anyone?
Thank you very much. And what I think that is a good thing to communicate is the importance of our thoughts and also our emotions, our system. For example, our emotions emit some hormones I don't know how the system of endocrinologia, endocrine system, and love is an energy, and our thoughts are energy, and our words are energy. And we can create love with the intention in the heart. We unify those energies with the positive intention, and we can create love. So, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
And thank you for honoring Ranulph in that way today.